Welcome to the 3 Degrees of Freedom podcast, where we explore lifestyle engineering with our expert guests to bring you in alignment with your own 3 degrees of freedom, location, time, and financial independence. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, we have a super fantastic treat. Today, we've got Mr. Michael Flight on the program with us. How are you, Michael?
I am doing fantastic today, Derek. Thanks for inviting me.
Amazing. Glad to have you on. For those who don't know Michael Flight, I don't know which rock you're living under, but he is the visionary real estate entrepreneur known as the Godfather of blockchain real estate. And he's the co-founder of the Liberty Real Estate Fund, the world's first net lease security token fund, and also the mind behind the Blockchain Real Estate Summit, which I first found out about him back a couple of years ago, actually, in 2021 in September, around that time frame where he did one of his real estate blockchain summits. He is at the forefront of revolutionizing retail real estate investment, and he has a career spanning back to 1985, co-founded Concordia Real Estate Corporation in 1990, which is also a company renowned for its successful partnerships with major financial institutions. And he is an expert in navigating the realms of retail real estate, triple net, and blockchain real estate / tokenization. Michael, it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks again, Derek. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get started like we normally do with all of our guests. And we want to ask you, Mr. Michael Flight, which of the 3 degrees of freedom, that's location, time, and financial, do you feel the most strongest in right now? And which one do you want to develop further on down the road?
Well, right now I'm feeling pretty weak in all of them since I have to pay my real estate taxes on my house. And I really want to relocate out of Illinois, but I've got some family commitments here that I feel stronger about. And my time, I do really want to get back some of my time. But honestly, I love all the stuff that I'm working on right now. We're working on a lot of stuff and a lot of different projects, and I'm meeting people all over the world that are really, I believe, going to change the world. So my time, the great thing is that my kids are all grown up. And the only thing I've got is this and, taking care of the house and things like that. So I love doing what I'm doing. So, I'm pretty good on the time. And like I said, the amount of stuff that we're working on requires a lot of capital. So I've got a lot of capital out there. And, a lot of people tell me at my age, it's like, well, why don't you just kick back and take it easy a little bit? I'm like, I really don't. Number one, I can't golf. And if somebody went out and golfed with me, they would actually end up strangling me with a club. So this is what I love doing. And like I said, I'm meeting people, as I told you, just on a call. And one guy was in South Africa, the other guy's in Slovenia, and, there's another guy that's living in London, and, there's 2 guys here. So I'm loving it, and that's kind of where I'm at. Sorry for the long explanation.
No, I think the common thread that I got behind all of that, Michael, is that you're choosing all of these things. So in my mind, since you have the full ability, if you needed to be able to drop everything and just change your location or change your time or, just not do anything at all, you have the ability to do that. But I think that the spirit of this is that you are choosing the life that you have right now. And I think that's what I'm getting from all of the stuff that you're talking about right now. At least
You're getting that a little bit, but I want to choose to change my location. So especially going into winter in Chicago.
That makes sense. Very cool. Well, the first thing I want to talk about here today, I've got a lot that I wanted to discuss, but because tokenization, and this is my show, and tokenization is one of the things that I felt was just an incredible game changer in terms of, how real estate potentially could move forward in the next century or the next couple of years, even depending on what your time frame is. I wanted to talk a little bit more about what is tokenization for the audience. So maybe you could take a minute just to explain what that is in your eyes.
Sure. When I talk about tokenization, I'm mainly talking about tokenizing real estate funds. And I like to separate that because there's a lot of people out there that say, at some point, real estate title is going to be on a blockchain and you'll be able to trade real estate like you trade NFTs. Now, number one, I don't believe that is going to happen. It might happen, but I don't believe that's going to happen because there's a lot of things that are deliberately designed in real estate to slow it down a little bit so that you don't, do $1 million purchase, and then realize that there's a whole bunch of problems wrong with the building and stuff like that. So I don't know if you're ever, I think you might be able to get to like a 3-day close, or, you could do a 1-day sight unseen close. But so that's one part. And one part is putting title on the blockchain. And to give a better concrete example, the state of California put all their car titles on blockchain so that every car that's registered in the state of California, they can point to it on a blockchain, and they, you can verify that it's a real asset in a real vehicle. And I think that's going to happen in real estate. It's just going to take a lot longer. Where I'm most interested in, where I think it is a game changer, is raising capital for real estate and raising debt for real estate and ways to invest in real estate. So what we do is tokenize real estate funds, either real estate equity funds or real estate debt funds. And it kind of breaks up so it's basically, if people are familiar with syndications, this is exactly like a paper syndication where you combine together with other people to buy a property. But the syndication shares are tradable. So after a 1-year lockup period in the United States, those shares can trade. Or the other thing that it opens up is that you could potentially borrow against your shares because you have a provable asset there. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I'm working on.
That is incredible. And I've always wondered, is that what you said about the 1-year lockup period? Because I'm wondering about like depreciation and some of those things that real estate investors know about, right? Like you have bonus depreciation, you have that type of thing. Does all of that stuff go away when it becomes a tokenized asset, or how does that work?
No, it's exactly the same as a regular paper share, but somebody could potentially invest in the property for, and you would have to, I am, number one, not an attorney, and I'm number two, not an accountant. So you'd have to, but somebody could potentially invest in something, take it, all the depreciation in the year that they have it, and then sell it to somebody else that might be a cash flow investor and might say, I don't need the depreciation, I just need the return. So, but these work exactly like a paper syndication, all your traditional, syndications. It's a security. You just have this extra, optionality. And also you have, I believe, for sponsors, an extra way to raise capital because it expands your capital raising horizon.
Interesting. Just out of curiosity, again, this is for me as a syndicator myself. If you have someone, that's a major partner in your fund or inside as an equity holder of your asset, and they decide to tokenize after about a year or two of operation, right? Do the new owners of those tokens, do they take over the ownership so that when the property sells, those tokens also are reassessed at the fair market value when the property sells, or do they end up carrying through to the next, or how is that?
So your syndication, let's say you're the GP and I'm the LP. So, and we go out, you specialize in multifamily, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So we go out and you find a multifamily property and I say, I'm going to invest in it. So my shares of that normally would just be paper shares, and so I'd sign the subscription agreements and everything else. These are tokenized shares. You still do the DocuSign, sign the subscription agreement, and everything else. It's just that my tokenized shares are exactly the same. And so if I chose to sell all or a portion of my shares, those shares would just be in the exact same position as the LP that I had. So let's say I invested $100,000 into one of your deals. And after the 1-year lockup period, I decided that I needed, to cash out 50,000 of it. And let's say that the shares are 10,000 a piece. So I sold 5 shares for 50,000. That new investor comes in and they're in the exact same spot that I was. So your position as GP doesn't change and their position as LP doesn't change.
Amazing. And when the property is sold, those shares go along with the sale, correct? So they're essentially liquidated?
everything. So it's exactly like the paper shares, the same trajectory, the same pathway that you would as an LP investor. I find you, I trust Derek, I like the deal, I invest in the deal. I happen to need a liquidity event, so I sell part of my shares. So now it's me and these other new investors in the deal. Once Derek decides he's either going to refinance or he's going to sell the property, those shares either get, money back in a distribution, and they're getting the cash flow at the same time, all the way through. And then once it sells, that token and the entire token goes away, because the life cycle of the token is done.
Excellent. Okay. This is
just like the life cycle of a syndication is done once it's sold.
Makes sense. Okay. And you have a fund. We'll get into this a little bit later on, but you have a fund where you're able to essentially do this exact type of thing where you're investing in these particular assets. And then, after the year lockout period or something, you evaluate whether it's a good investment. And then you can decide to sell these shares, so to speak, in the forms of a token to investors who may want to take part in that. Is that correct?
Right. But like I say, the shares are all tokens. So yes.
Of course. Excellent. Man, this is so cool. This is right up my alley. I made sure when I was creating my PPM to ensure that there was a tokenization clause that allows me to be able to do that with my fund.
Also. You're way ahead of the game. This is what I tell all sponsors. Like, they say, how do I start? I'm like, well, you don't have to go tokenize right away. What you should do is every new deal in your subscription agreement and your offering documents, just have the language, and there's, probably about, 5 or 6 clauses. Just have the language in there that, these can be tokenized and they can be issued at some date in the future as a token. So Derek is way out in front of everybody.
Well, I'm just trying to catch up to you, Michael. That's basically it. Anyway, so what I want to do, I want to back up a little bit now that we know a little bit about what tokenization is, and hopefully the audience has a picture of what they can do with this and the potential that's there. Okay, let's back up a little bit and talk about the moment that you discovered this. When did you come across this concept, and when did you put this all together to be like, man, like I could take this here and do this here? I know you have a lot of experience, but I just want to hear about that moment that you put the 2 and 2 together, or you came up with the idea.
It was, it was over a number of years, and it was like, it wasn't one of those instant aha moments. It was like, here's this piece of information here, here's this piece of information here, and I'm still getting new pieces of information that, you plug into the model and see if it works. But originally, a guy that I know, we were at a conference, and he was a libertarian guy, and I think it was around 2014, but he's telling me about this magic internet money called Bitcoin. And we went out to dinner. I had no idea what he was talking about, and nor did I care, because it's like, what does that have to do with me? And so I just kind of filed it away. And then around 2000 to 2016, most of the really smart people that I know were talking about this thing called blockchain. And so I remember, telling my kids who were in high school and college at the time, I said, I don't know what this thing is, but you guys need to figure it out, because these guys are not only really smart, but they're really wealthy. And, if they're on to this trend, I said, so you should go figure it out. Well, they never went and figured it out. And then Adam, we were just talking about it earlier, Adam Carswell and I are citizens of a startup country called Liberland. Mm-hmm. It's in the middle of the Danube, in between Croatia and Serbia. And the entire, country is run on blockchain. So through that, I was introduced to these guys that were creating what's called an ICO, which is an initial coin offering. And they were based in Romania at the time. And they just basically, I don't even think they own the Airbnbs. I think they just managed Airbnbs. But they did this thing called Bedcoin, and they needed a real estate advisor. So I don't know how they ended up contacting Adam, and Adam ended up introducing him to me. And so I helped them. Their white paper had the word awesome in it 400 times. And so we cleaned up their white paper a little bit. But anyways, it was during the height of the crypto boom in 2017, 2018. These guys raised $1.2 million. And there was actually nothing behind it. And so I'm like, if these guys could raise $1 million too, I should be able to raise $1 billion, because I could actually do it with real estate and have real estate experience. And I just heard a podcast today where real world assets are now the thing in crypto. And these guys who are major venture capitalists are saying, well, real world assets aren't going to take off unless people with experience in real world assets start doing them instead of the technology guys that don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, yes, I've been saying that since 2019. So anyways, to make a long story longer, around 2019, well, actually, when these guys did this, and then I kept seeing people investing in Bitcoin, and I'm like, why wouldn't you just invest in real estate? I mean, because I don't know what's behind Bitcoin. And to me, there was nothing backing Bitcoin. And I'm not, saying anything bad about Bitcoin, but I actually own Bitcoin and I like Bitcoin, but I couldn't see anything behind it. And so I'm like, why not create a real estate stable coin? And so that was my vision in 2018, 2019. I kept playing around with it. We went out and tried to do it and realized that we had Nexus in the United States. So it's actually a security in the United States. So you have to do everything legally so that's how we ended up doing Liberty Fund, spending a ton of money, getting not only the legal part right, because it was like completely novel and there was only a few attorneys out there that would do it, but we also spent a ton of money getting the accounting part right, because it was very difficult to figure out the accounting part of it. And also we were looking at, and we, did set up a fund for non-US investors. So hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was an experiment. It didn't go as well as I would like. So that's when we started the Blockchain Real Estate Summit to educate people on how to do this. And I was just on a call earlier today with some venture capitalist guys, and he explained, it's like, yeah, you want at least 30 to 40 different companies in the space doing things to create a market. And I'm like, well, I did that with the Blockchain Real Estate Summit. I just didn't know I was doing that. So, but I, had this intuitive sense. It's like, this isn't going to get adoption unless investors know what it is and unless sponsors start issuing it. So that's when we went out and did the Animal House. We need to go do something really stupid. So we created the Blockchain Real Estate Summit to educate people. And so that's what we've been doing.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, thank you for all of that. And I'm glad that you walked us through, exactly how you discovered it and then where you got to today, because I was very curious. And because the thing is for me, I found out about it through Adam. And then I was also just looking because everything was going crazy with Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these cryptocurrencies a couple of years ago, even in like 2020 and that time. I've always had a passion for computing and technology. And also my distrust for the Fed and distrust for the current monetary system drew me towards cryptocurrency. And yet I also had this love of real estate. And as soon as I saw your summit, which I think, was it in Austin in 2021?
Yes.
It was in Austin. Yeah. Ironically, I was in Indy tending to all of my investments. And now I'm actually here in Austin. And so, but in any event, when I first saw that, I was like, I have to attend this. So I attended your first event. And, I remember learning a lot about what platforms to build under and the different layers. Like you got the first layer, the second layers of all these different, coins. And I forgot exactly which one was talking about doing these like almost title-like transactions underneath it. But there was all kinds of real stuff and just opened up my eyes a lot. And so I got super excited about all of this.
And to go back with the, concept of your podcast, freedom.
Yes.
I still believe in, a lot of people in the United States don't understand blockchain and crypto and don't understand a lot of this stuff because they don't need it. They have, what they see as a stable money, even though, you and I can see that the money isn't stable if it's losing 10% every year. But there's people out there like Argentina and Turkey and, Venezuela. I mean, their inflation went 1,400% last year down to 400% this year. Yeah. Wow, inflation's coming down. But I believe there's so many people in the world that are unbanked or underbanked that this is going to change the world. And so if people can invest in real estate anywhere in the world and you don't need, you can just invest $10 in it, that's a game changer. And, like, for example, we had all kinds of people from Turkey that really wanted to get out of the lira and didn't want to leave their money in the bank, because if you leave your money in the bank in Turkey, your money actually just loses money, so that at the end of the year, there's nothing left. And so if they can get out of that and put their money, like, so that's why so many people are investing and putting their money in like Tether or, another dollar stable coin, because at least they can get their money into the dollar, which is stabler than their money. So like, look at it. If you could just disintermediate the banks, and I'm not saying, disintermediate, but if you could just create a wealth coin, which is what, we're trying to do,
Yes.
they can have their wealth protected. And what's the tried and true, the most proven asset in history? It's real estate. And I'll just bring up one more thing. I was talking to this guy out of Egypt, and he said most people, as soon as they get extra money, they don't put it in the bank. They go out and buy another house, because that's the way they store their wealth, because everybody in the world stores their wealth in real estate. So anyways, I'm sorry. I just get really excited about this, because to me, if you can get billions and billions of people financial freedom, and they can all do it on the phone, because there's 95% penetration in the world with phones, it's a huge game changer that's going to improve a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, to add another layer on top of this as well, is there are people in the United States that have gone back 3-4 generations. We're talking, to the silent generation, to the greatest generation, to the 1900s. And at the time, if you were to hold your money in dollars, they would, for the most part, appreciate nicely, or because the US was growing in power, right? Like it was one of those rising empires. So as the United States won World War II, the currency kept strengthening, and obviously there's blips here and there, but in general, it was a safe place to put your capital. But nowadays, we as a younger generation, or as people heading into this new age, who knows what will happen in the future, right? And people are still under the impression that if they save their money in dollars, they're safe.
Right.
Want to break that mentality, because just like you mentioned, in different countries, right? Like even in the euro, or in Japan, or in these other places, if you put your money into the government central currency, how is it that why would you trust the government of that so much? Because you're really just putting your trust in the government when you're holding money in dollars. Yes, we transact in it, but you don't have to hold your net worth in dollars when you save, when it's being inflated away, and you have no control over how much inflation goes there. Instead, you can buy tokenized real estate, right, through the blockchain in a very easy way, which is why I love what you guys are doing here. So anyway, I hope I didn't go on a soapbox for too long, but I just wanted to add on top.
No, I want to add to the dollar part of it, because our smartest founder, Benjamin Franklin, wanted to tie the dollar. It was a little bit complicated, and it probably wouldn't have worked, but he wanted to tie the dollar to land.
Wow, I did not know.
Yeah, and that's where that was also one of the pieces in the back of my head, that it's like, oh, so you could make land coin like what Benjamin Franklin originally wanted to do.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh. The founding fathers would be so proud of you.
You have to execute on it. They executed. Then they executed very well.
Absolutely. So, okay, I want to turn a little bit to current events with a little bit of an eye going back to recent history. So today we're recording this in the middle-ish of November 2023. And as you know, in the news, the coin has just jumped quite a bit. I have a feeling it's because of some of the instability in the world right now, and some of the, politics and lots of things happening in the world right now. And the world's feeling a little bit unsafe, is my thought. What do you think regulation is going to be doing to blockchain and cryptocurrency investing? Or is that something that you're even worried about? Is that something that's on your radar as someone who looks to tokenize real estate?
All right. Number one, I'm going to argue with you a little bit about people jumping into Bitcoin because of instability. I think the major jump has been that the SEC will approve a Bitcoin ETF. And so the SEC lost a lawsuit, which is, this gets at your regulation point of view. So that was one of them. And then next year, there's going to be another Bitcoin halving. So I think the two of those, and we might see Bitcoin fall down a little bit, but the major jump was somebody falsely had said that, BlackRock had gotten their Bitcoin ETF approved, but it was off to the races. And, I think, I still believe that Bitcoin is a good buy. And that's why I believe if you start dollar cost averaging into it now, it's going to be a great asset. Now let's get back to your regulation part of it, because everywhere else in the world, like Europe and everybody else, has a spot Bitcoin ETF. The United States doesn't. The United States, to me, is painfully backwards in terms of regulation. I heard this from somebody else a long time ago, and it's resonated with me so much. It was the guys that started Fundrise. And this is when crowdfunding had just started, and I met, those guys, and they've just done a fantastic job. But anyways, Ben had said, anybody can go out and buy a lottery ticket and it's not regulated, but you have to be an accredited investor to get into a quality deal. And so I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's like, why is that? And I've got, slot machines and everything else all over the place, or they want to funnel you into, some of these stock indexes and things like that. It's like, why can't I just invest my money with Derek, who I trust, who I know, and everything else? Oh, I have to be an accredited investor. I might not be able to. So that's the type of stuff. But the regulation here in the United States, especially the regulatory uncertainty, is driving a lot of new industry offshore. So Singapore, if you see most crypto foundations, they're all in Singapore or someplace else. The European zone just did new legislation that makes things much easier to do. Switzerland has always been a great destination for new investment products, and Luxembourg too. Dubai has these really cool things where they've got like these free trade zones where you can actually, if you locate your business in those free trade zones, they have special financial regulations that aren't even in Dubai. It's just, okay, I walked across the street, now I'm in this free trade zone, and there's these special regulations. But the other thing that Dubai is also setting up, in the United Arab Emirates, is they're setting up like world courts that can adjudicate, and it's based on English common law. So I believe, are in danger of falling behind. We created, the United States. I say we because I'm a citizen of the United States. I've been born in the United States. We created most of these technology industries, and a lot of them are going to go offshore because of this regulatory uncertainty.
That's really a shame. And I've actually been hearing the same thing from other people in the technology space. Again, I'm not really in the tech space very much, but from the podcasts that I'm listening to and from the people that do know those folks, I'm hearing the exact same thing, which is very worrisome. Do you feel like this legislation?
Well, and I just want to,
Go ahead.
say one additional thing. The regulatory uncertainty also has created problems with creating capital. So, the only way that we are going to grow out of whatever debt that they're printing is through creating new jobs, new industries, new stuff, and new companies. And if you screw up your capital formation and that capital formation markets go offshore, you've just lost that too. That's the reason why the dollar is the dollar. Number one, because at one point, and it still is, backed by the U.S. Army. But the other thing is, it's like got the deepest liquidous markets in the world. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Derek, but you just hit on something that we as a country need to like figure out, what makes things work. And, business makes America work.
Yeah, being a productive society, right? Like solving problems, doing things, cutting out like inefficient processes and doing things better and quicker and easier is not something that's synonymous with regulation. At least that's my take on it.
Well, and also the most fundamental thing, which regulation takes away,
yes,
is property rights. The more you regulate, the more property rights you have taken away. And we have fundamental rights to property. And, now all of a sudden they say, oh, you can't own that, or you can't own that crypto. It's my crypto. I chose to buy it. And it's like the money in my hand. Is it my property?
right.
So I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but you really got me on the soapbox today, Derek.
I really appreciate that because it is something that needs to be heard and said. And if there's anyone out there that is listening to this and picking up what you're saying, then I think it's important for people to hear this, because this is almost fundamental to the values of a country, right? Or the values of a people. And so that's why I think there's so much passion behind this, which I'm 100% on the same page. And I'm just glad that we're touching on it. And one thing that I wanted to take us to after saying all of that and going down that rabbit hole there is, how would you advise people who are just getting started right now to look at tokenization and be a part of this ownership thing where they're basically outside of the US dollar directly and more into, getting themselves into alternative assets without being pegged to the dollar? How would you advise people to start looking at getting into this?
Now, are we talking about investors or sponsors? And are we talking about people in the US or people in the non-US?
We're talking about a US citizen who has modest capital that's just looking to get started and diversify themselves.
Okay. Right now, there are tokenization platforms that you can invest in. The granddaddy of them all, and the one that's been around the longest, and I believe they've got the best operations, is Realty. That's realty.co. But they, in the United States, will only deal with accredited investors. And the other thing that I'm not exactly excited about with Realty, but this is their business model, is they invest in crappy houses. They invest in good houses in crappy neighborhoods in Detroit, south side of Chicago, and stuff like that, because their investors are looking for high cap rates.
High returns.
Yeah. I think that's a tough way to make a living. And I really, as I said, coming from Chicago, believe that Chicago will steal, your property 1 year at a time, through high property taxes.
Yeah.
But anyways, those guys are doing it well. There's other competitors out there that are also doing it. Most of the successful ones out there right now are investing in single family houses, to rent. But there's some up and coming, tokenization platforms that I think, in 2024, we're going to see a lot more, properties and a lot more funds that are tokenized.
Yeah.
So, I think what people should do is educate themselves about what tokenization is. And the other thing is that I think it goes back to exactly kind of what we were talking about initially. They need to know the sponsor behind it. So I need to trust Derek. And that's more important than the technology part of it to me. Because if you trust and know Derek, and Derek knows what he's doing with multifamily, or if you trust me and know that I've been around the block with shopping centers and know a little bit about shopping centers, and other people have trusted me with millions of dollars, that's really more important than the technology part of it. And then once you're comfortable with that, so I said, get some education on it. And then also I would say, in order to learn a little bit more about tokenization, is maybe buy some Bitcoin and buy some Ethereum, so that you are outside of the dollar asset class. And your money, if you can imagine this, if your money is in a wallet, it's actually, and it's in an electronic wallet, it's kind of like money on your phone or money on your computer, but it's actually not in the banking system. So it's outside the banking system. So I would, do that. If you're a gold guy, there's a coin out there called Pax Gold. So you can invest in tokenized gold. There's a few different tokenized gold things. So I would just do that just to get comfortable with the technology, because at some point, it's not going to be as hard as it is now to create a wallet. It's just going to be, I sign up for Derek's investment. I don't even know that there's blockchain behind here. Just like we're on, a Zoom today, we don't know that this is going over a TCP/IP protocol. We don't know how, an email gets sent. All we know is we press send. But just familiarize yourself with it and go out there. But the most important thing is it quality real estate? Is it an operator who knows what they're doing?
Yeah, very well said. I think that for the listeners out there, to summarize what Michael's point was, is I think that you can never go wrong with investing in your own education. And that goes with everything, especially when it comes to investments. And taking Michael's advice, to buy some Bitcoin or Ethereum in a wallet to see how it works and see how it feels to own an asset that's not pegged by US dollars. Or I guess it is in a way, because usually people will trade in US dollars right now, but it may be something else. But it's a way for you to, even value how much the asset's worth. But one Ethereum token is one Ethereum token, and the amount of money that it's worth is it. Yeah, it's very interesting. So highly recommend.
It's outside
Yes.
It's outside the dollar system, and it's outside the banking system.
Yes.
Is the key thing.
That's absolutely right. So if the dollar hyperinflates, then the value of your token goes with it as well, right? So it's a relation to just that.
Or theoretically, it's uncorrelated.
Correct.
So that, if the dollar hyperinflates and you lose, 50% of your, dollar value, your Bitcoin could, either stay the same or keep going up, or not go down as fast as the dollar. Exactly. So you're in an uncorrelated asset.
100%. Awesome. So I have one more question for you before we head into the rapid round here, which is 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests and meant to be answered quickly. But let me ask you one last question. Can I talk with you a little bit about your personal philosophy and getting aligned with long-term success and fulfillment? Because you've had a long career, you're constantly pioneering and like basically trailblazing a way for a lot of people here, while still doing some of the things that you know best, which is, retail, triple net leasing, all of that, but then also doing your fund here, tokenization. Can you talk a little bit about fulfillment and long-term success while you're doing these different things going through life?
I'm a Christian, so I'm guided by a Christian worldview. And, one of that is that, not only that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, but also it's like, how do I, make the world a better place after I realize that, I've gotten this gift. So that's one of the things that's always driven me. The other thing is that I guess I never listened to a lot of people, because a lot of people told me not to become a real estate broker and work on commission only. And then they told me not to start a company. And then they told me this and that. And I haven't listened to people, to my detriment, I will say, because, there was a lot of things that I should have listened to people and not plunged into a lot of stuff. And it's been an expensive education. One thing I will say is that when I was starting out in the business, we started out with regular phones and fax machines. And then the internet was just being invented. So it was dial-up modems. My first computer I bought like in 1988. It was $4,000. And I've got a phone that's like 50 times better than that. So it wasn't like it is now. It is so much better now. People complain about how bad the world is and, what's going on and blah, 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 blah. You only know how bad the world is because like the world is constantly at your, right on that screen on your phone. But the really cool thing is that you can get the best minds in the world on your phone, and you can get all kinds of like really cool stuff, which I had, if we were buying a shopping center down in St. Louis, Missouri or something, I had to like fly down there, and like actually see it, because there was no Google Maps and you had to use a paper map. So I'm not just saying this to say, oh, I had to walk uphill both ways to school because I'm so old. I'm saying this, the world is in a great place right now. Take advantage of it and, just keep learning. And so that's, I think, my biggest thing. When I see something cool and I see something that's going to change the world, I'm like, how do I adapt this to my paradigm? And as I told you, I didn't understand Bitcoin and I couldn't, adapt it to my paradigm because I was a hard asset guy. And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe you could do this to get the benefits of that and then get the benefits of the hard asset. So I don't know if that answered the question, but it's long and rambling. It's keep learning, keep growing.
Yeah, I think what I got out of that is and again, I think a common theme here is just like the hard work, right? And just the not giving up piece, taking advantage and just being grateful for what you have right now, because even though, yes, the world is a difficult place to be in, the quality of life has also improved quite a bit. And I would agree with you there. Like you could have any book essentially in the world that was ever written inside your pocket within 5 minutes. you
Well,
know.
you can also listen to it, whereas you used to have to read it.
That's right.
I mean,
Exactly.
before I'm a subscriber to Audible, and this is not a paid thing,
Yeah.
but originally I subscribed to books on tape,
Yeah.
and books on tape would literally mail you a box of cassette tapes,
Yeah.
So, and then they turned into, they were bought by Amazon and Audible. So,
Correct. Yeah. And then Netflix came along, right? And we
right.
had these DVDs getting mailed out and stuff. And then that's the end of Blockbuster. And yeah, just it's very, very interesting stuff. And so I love your take of gratitude onto it, like all the incredible blessings that we have to be able to continue learning and continue growing and being more productive and helping more people all at scale. So I think that's amazing. All
And
right.
I'd have a lot more gratitude if I lived in Austin with you. But anyway,
Yeah, it's amazing. Anyways, let's jump into the rapid round. We have 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests here before we end the show. Question number 1: name any resource that was or is essential in your journey to pursue freedom.
geez, this is a hard one. I would say the Bible.
Yes, I get.
And it's not only for, the real examples. I'm going to say, first and foremost, in Genesis, we were created in the image of God. And so if you're created in the image of God, you're created to be free, and you're created out of love. So, and then there's a great quote in Samuel, one of them, where, Samuel was disappointed that they wanted a king and that God wouldn't be their king. And God lays out this whole thing. It's like, well, the king is going to take, tax them. The king is going to take their sons and make them go to war and everything. I'm like, this is like exactly, but it also has a ton of information on property rights in there. So I'm sorry to go off, but that's, why I say that.
Great. No, good stuff. Excellent. Okay, number 2. If you woke up and your entire business was gone and all you had was $500, a laptop, place to live, and some food, what do you think you would do first?
Probably say a prayer and then get to work rebuilding.
And what would that rebuilding look like? Would it be calling folks and trying to put like an investment together, or how would that look for you?
It wouldn't be trying to put an investment together, but I've got a really wide network. So I would, more than likely just try to restart the business, or maybe the business didn't work. So I, probably try to redo it. I feel confident that at my age, with my connections, that, I really am blessed with a lot of resources right now. And I tell the people that work for me that you not only are working with me, but, when you tell me that you don't have money to buy your own stuff, I mean, you've got my network, so it's like, as long as you're not an idiot, just go out and use my network. And some of them have surpassed me, in terms of skill doing that. So
Amazing. Amazing. Very cool. Number 3, what does if you have one, your self-reflection and goal setting practices look like?
I try to set goals every year. I, try to take a look at where I'm at on a weekly thing. But I'm also a lot of times not rigid with those goals,
Hmm?
because I realize that sometimes the goal isn't the right goal and it has to be moved in a different direction. So it's also being contemplative that, if I'm spending time on something that I shouldn't be spending time on, that I might need to move that goal, or say, that goal's probably not, a good goal for me right now. Maybe it's this over here from what I've learned from these particular failures or setbacks.
Would that be something that you look at just, randomly, or do you have like a standardized process where you take a look at things every quarter or every year?
I do journaling and write down every day.
Hmm.
I have a set amount of things that, every day, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm working on. And what are the action items that I need to do every day to move those forward? And, and what are the things that I need to give up so that I'm not wasting time on other things that are ministerial, or, that number one can be done by somebody else, or I should just say, no, I can't do this.
Yeah, love it. Great. Thank you very much. So, what core work habits do you attribute to your success? Like, what parts of your personality do you feel really have gotten you to where you are?
My reading and curiosity, and also just working, I guess, working hard, and then realizing that, it's sometimes working smart. But I can tell you that I've changed so much of my work habits just by reading,
Mm.
and the resources that have come out over the last 20 years versus what there was before that. It's just an order of magnitude better as to, like, and one of the things I can tell you off the top of my head is reading early on when it first came out, the 4 Hour Work Week,
Yeah.
because there was just a bunch of things. And I'm in an industry where things are old, things don't change. And when I started telling people, I don't know how many years ago, but I started like working with people outside the country, to be VAs or to do like underwriting for us or things like that. And I started telling guys that are in institutional real estate, I'm like, I've got a woman in Bulgaria who is just the best underwriter ever. And as long as we get the stuff to her by 5 o'clock, here, it doesn't have to be 5 o'clock, but they're 8 hours ahead. Our stuff is done, the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like the lights go off on these guys, like, are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you trust people? I'm like, I trust them better than some people here in the United States. Why wouldn't you?
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Last question, the rapid round that I have for you is what tool or process has become one of your most important time, money, or energy saving ninja magic tricks that you use practically every day?
The computer.
Yes. Yes.
No,
Any
I'm serious. I couldn't have started, even in 1990, we could not have started our company without the invention of the personal computer, the PC.
Yep.
And like I said, when I bought my first computer, it had to be like done with a floppy drive startup. You had to boot it with a startup. We had, I can't even remember, it wasn't Excel at the time. It was Lotus, or it was some other Magic Calc thing. And there was a word processor, but there was no way that I could have. I mean, we didn't have a cell phone. I had a car phone, so it was installed in the car. So there was no mobile phone. So I'm going to tell you, from 1990 through now, the computer has been the tool. And then, you add on, I look at the internet and all the rest of the stuff as an add-on, but there's no way I could have done it because in high school, I took a computer class and it was called Fortran, and the computer filled up a giant, room, and the computing was done on punch cards.
Yep.
So there's no way. And then, at the time, larger companies were using mini computers, which were, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 1980s. So
Yeah. That's crazy. I remember going in to seeing my dad because he was in IT. And back when I was like in the early 90s, I was very young in Southern California in Los Angeles, going in and smelling and this was in like the mid 90s. So the computers had gotten reasonably smaller, but they were still in this giant room, in
right.
the computer. And there was like fans and stuff like moving the heat and everything out.
Right.
And I just remember that smell of what is it? It's like a metallic.
Ozone.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. It's like this metallic, almost salty smell in the air. I don't know how to describe it, but
right. And they were in a special like computer room with a raised floor and everything else. Yes.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I love it. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure having you on. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and telling us about what's happening in tokenization and many other things in this world. It's been great to have you on. But before we go, can you tell us a little bit more about how the people can find you and, anything you want to say to the audience right now?
Sure. If they want to learn more about blockchain, we have a, blockchain and real estate report at investonmain.com. And if you just hit the report, it really explains, how blockchain in real estate can integrate, and it's a good starting point. There's a ton of stuff that I have on our social media. They can find me on LinkedIn. And if they want to learn more about triple net properties and retail real estate, they can go to libertyfund.io. We have extensive information. And I also have a podcast called the Nothing But Net podcast.
I love it, man. That's great. Fantastic. And we'll put all of those inside of the show notes for the podcast page for you, Michael, for being our guest on the show. And
and there's one more thing that I forgot. If they really want to learn more about blockchain real estate, they can go to the blockchainrealestatesummit.com and they can get a replay of the Blockchain Real Estate Summit. So that's blockchainrealestatesummit.com. And that's like, we just had a worldwide event where we had it 3 full days. We had 1 day in Europe, 1 day in Asia, 1 day in the Americas. And literally everybody that's doing, well, most of the people that are doing big things in blockchain real estate, we had them from all over the world. So if you want to like learn more, and you don't have to do everything, you could just, pick and choose the topics. But I would suggest that's a good place to start learning as well.
Wonderful.
Sorry to interrupt you again, Derek.
Oh, you're good, Michael. I appreciate it. It's all great information. And again, we'll go ahead and link to all of the stuff inside the show notes. And once again, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for all of you listeners who have listened to this point in the podcast, I want to thank you guys as well. And wherever you're listening or watching the podcast, please make sure that you interact with us. You like, subscribe, even comment, and let us know how we're doing, because we want to have more incredible guests like Michael on the show and more amazing listeners like yourself to tune in. Please do that so that we can appease the algorithm gods and get to more people. That's what we want to do. So, Michael, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Have a great one, guys. We'll see you next time.